Hello, how are you doing? Now in this video, let's learn about creating a separate component and how you can use that separate component all together. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another component here inside source folder, and let's name it loading.js. And as you can see, the capital letter, this is the convention, okay, used in all the components. Okay, so we got the loading component. The first thing we need to do is we need to make sure we have React in the scope. So import React from React, okay, and then this time we don't need to create a class component. Okay, we can use a functional component, a simple component, because class is useful when you want to use all these states. Okay, you want the constructor, you want to create a state, you want to bind the methods. For all that stuff, you want to use the lifecycle methods. So in that case, you would use class component. But for simple data input output, you can use a simple stateless component. Okay, these are called stateful. Class components are called stateful. These are called stateless. Okay, so let's create one. Const, let's name it loading equals to, it will take, this is the arrow function. Okay, the arguments, there's nothing to take any argument, and it will simply return, let's return the loading text in h2. Okay, now this is our component. It's a dead simple stateless component. Now we can do export default loading. Okay, now this loading component is available to use in any other component. We just need to import. Okay, so let's go ahead in app.js, let's import that. Import from, it's in the same directory, so /loading. Okay, so now we are importing. Instead of down here, instead of showing this text, what I can do is I can render this component. Okay, loading, and make sure to close like so. Okay, it's very important. Okay, so now what we did, we created a separate component, loading component. It's just very simple. It just returns the h2. We import that in our app.js, and instead of hard coding the text, we rendered. So in this case, if the loading state is false, we render this list of users, otherwise we display the loading component. Okay, let's see how it works. So refresh, as you can see, the h2 loading, otherwise it works perfectly fine. Beautiful. Okay, so now I want to show you a couple of more things about this import export. So what we did here is we just have one component here. Sometimes you can create many components. Okay, so what you can do is that time you can have export const loading, and then you might have, sorry, this one, you can have one export like so, another one like so, another one like so. You can have many components. In a situation like that, you wouldn't use export default. Okay, in that case you would just get rid of this because you are exporting many. So if you have only one, then you would use export default. Otherwise, if you have many, you don't do export default, you just do like so. Okay, so let's try. Even on one we can try. So export const. Now we're not doing export default, we're doing export const. Now if you go here, you see the error. So export default was not found. Okay, so that's what happens when we are exporting like so. But in a situation like this, how do you use that? What you can do is go back to app.js, and instead of importing like this, if it was a default export, it would work like this. But since it is different, what you do is you wrap this within the curly braces, just like you saw here. You do this. Okay, so this is a destructure. Now if you go, it works fine that way. Okay, so if you are exporting more than one constant, you might do like this, and when you import such constants, you use this syntax. Okay, now let me put it back the way it was, just for simplicity. Okay, save. Okay, it works fine. Now one more thing, in a situation you need to have multiple components to work with the main component. For example, this is the main component. Okay, so it need to render a lot of different things. Now it is only showing the loading, the one additional, but later you might want to show many items. So in that case, you can create many other components and use like so. It simplifies your code, and these components can be reusable as well. Okay, so in a situation like that, what you would do is you would create a component and you would pass the properties from here. Okay, so another component might pass another different property to this component, so this component can be reusable that time. Okay, so in this example, let's keep it very simple and let's pass the message. So when loading component loads, you want to display a different message. Let's give the message of, let's say, hey. Okay, so this is the message we are giving to this component. So this is the property for this component. Okay, now this component can get this property. If you go here, as you can see here, props, and here what you can do is you can say props message. Okay, now still works perfectly fine. As you can see, the message is being displayed there. Beautiful. Now you can even go one step further and you can destructure the property when in the function argument itself. Okay, so previously it was like that. Now instead of taking the props, we can directly destructure here. So what we're trying to get, we're trying to get the message, right? So you can simply say message here, and then here directly, instead of props and all that, you just do directly. And this, I like this way. This is much more simpler as well. Okay, so this way also it works. So you can see, refresh, beautiful. Now this loading component can be reusable. For example, now in this case, this app component is using this loading component and it is passing its own message. Now let's imagine another component you might create later. That time also you might want to show the loading component, but that time you might want to display a different message. For example, your shopping cart is being loaded or something like that, right? So you can pass different properties from different components, but this component can always stay the same as long as you keep the naming convention properly, use the message. It can always stay the same and it can be reusable. Okay, now instead of message, you can also pass the properties of the state. You could simply say message equals to this state and whatever you want to pass down, right? And that data could be rendered in a separate component. Okay, so the possibilities are endless. So just it's a general concept. You can pass the properties like so. Okay, so this is it for this lesson. Let's learn some more about React basics, and then we are ready to dive into Laravel with React. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.